me doing this part where I'm just chatting away and different because Instagram isn't live yet, but the other ones, people are like, what is she doing? Okay, here we go. Hi, everyone. Lisa from SheisMe. We are live here for another day with some speakers, and we're going to have one, two, three, four, five, six speakers today come on live with us so that you can meet the speakers prior to the conference. So this morning, we're kicking this off with Shannon Milliken. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you.
And Shannon is now going to tell us who she is and what she does. Shannon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Milliken. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the current executive director of a nonprofit called the Play Education Corporation. Play stands for Please Learn As You. So we are committed to creating environments where children can learn, grow, and thrive just as they are.
Love that. I love that. Um, my kids were lucky enough to go to Montessori, and I didn't know anything about Montessori, and I was changing schools for them when they were just going into school. And I loved the idea, how it was explained to me, is that they learn responsibility. They're responsible for themselves. They're responsible for their work. They get to grow at their own pace. And that was so important to me because I do think that kids learn differently. Everybody learns differently, right?
Yes.
At different rates. And I love the fact that you get to learn as you are because everyone's so unique. And why not? Yeah, I love this idea. And I love the fact that this could be the new way, right? This could be in a good new world that I see. This could be the new way. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like when we think about our larger systems, right, which
Mm-hmm.
10, 15 years ago might have been what was best for kids in our education system. I think right now, especially when we're talking about equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging, and kind of like this, like, who am I, right? I mean, not just
Yeah,
us as adults and us as women, but I think children, right? They're asking themselves, who are we, right? And so not
right.
only is it about creating environments and fostering the experience of just owning who you are and being comfortable with that, but I think it allows adults who are fostering that environment to really look at themselves and be like, what are potential conditioned behaviors or responses that we've had from our childhood growing up? What are
Yes.
our lived experiences and how are our own privileges and biases, coming across in how we are creating environments for kids? And then really taking a look into saying, like, is this what's best for kids right now, right? Or do
Right.
we need to take a personal shift and do some hard work and think about how do we create environments where kids can learn, grow, and thrive just as they are, instead of us saying, you need to be X, right? Or you need
Right.
to demonstrate Y in order to be successful. When
Right. And that's just the next evolution of that, sort of what I was talking about. It's that next, because there was still that I don't know, patriarchal sort of, this is what we learned. The teachers weren't teaching how you're talking about, so they were still teaching in their old learned ways. And I talk a lot about unlearning, and so I think it's so important that we that we do the work as adults to unlearn all of that sometimes dangerous habits and ineffective behaviors that
yeah,
our children don't need, that we didn't need either, but that, we don't need to pass down, right?
right.
So what inspired you to join us and tell your story?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So, I have a very unique story in the fact that I am a transracial adoptee. So, by definition, transracial is that I am 100% Korean and my parents are white. So, I was born in Korea, brought over to Colorado and was raised and grew up here and still live here in Colorado. And I think there's a couple of things that I have learned in my story is like, there is this assumption of what we assume people's stories to be based off what they look like or how they present themselves in society. And then I think combating the systems that aren't necessarily, the most inviting and or inclusive for marginalized communities like myself. And I think my personal pull to this now is I now have a biological biracial daughter. So again, a definition is I am married to someone who is white. We have a biological daughter. She is half Asian and half white. But I'm also realizing that while she looks very much like my husband, people will see her and they'll be like, she looks just like you. And a part of me gets really kind of like, well, I love that, right? Because I never had the experience of being able to say that I look like someone, but it's also this kind of realization of she is going to be identified as a woman of color. And so the same experiences that I have faced and that other individuals have faced of, microaggressions or biases or, racism, discrimination, all of these things that, I have faced as a woman of color, she will experience that too. And while I have learned that I cannot protect her from that, I can help advocate for systems change so that when she is in these systems, right, maybe she won't experience some of the same things that I have that other people have as well. And so I think sharing my story, I don't come at it as looking down on you, like this is the right way to do it. It's more like, this is what my experiences is. And sometimes when we learn from people's lived experiences, it allows us to have and develop more empathy and compassion for others, even though we may not have experienced that ourselves. And so it's really just to advocate and educate others to just have an additional mindset, not to say you have to change, right? But just saying, can we think about this in another perspective, how it might be impacting somebody else?
Right. No, absolutely. My father is Mexican. My mother is white. I got the white gene. everybody else got the Mexican gene. But grew up with my Mexican family, and I stuck out like a sore thumb because I was the only white kid. Like all the cousins and everybody else, were dark skinned and dark haired, and then there was me. So everyone would be like, who's that girl? If they came to like family parties or whatever. But I loved growing up in a biracial family. I loved both, like both sides were so completely different that it was a challenge and in a fun sort of way, but also identifying with my Mexican family because I was raised with my Mexican family, but not looking Mexican was a different kind of challenge. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I was never profiled against or anything because I have, I look white. So, but yeah, it's fun I think it's fun and I think it's amazing to learn about everybody's experiences and to realize that not everybody is the same and you can't make everybody be the same, right?
Exactly.
You just
exactly.
can't.
Yeah. And asking people to fit into these norms or these binary boxes, right? And then when we don't, and it kind of like goes against like what we're feeling or, who we are, right? Then all of those kind of societal triggers of like, I'm not worthy, I'm not valuable, I'm unlovable, all of those things we start to internalize, right? And then it comes out in like armor or, protective behaviors that is not our authentic selves. And so really kind of trying to create space for others, but also for ourselves in owning our own story. It's very empowering to say, this is who I am. There is space for me to be just who I am. And I'm going to own that. Right. And there's that empowerment piece of when you are comfortable in the skin that you were born in, which is my personal journey of, I don't know if you can relate, but I was never white enough and I was never Asian enough.
Yeah.
So I never really had this true feeling of belonging. And so it was always constantly, what can I do to feel like I fit in? And that came out in probably very negative behaviors for me. It was, obsessiveness with my other characteristics that weren't Asian, right? So being toned and skinny and athletic, right? Because
Right.
that's how I identified, because I couldn't identify with my Asian characteristics, right? But I can't change that. And so now learning to embrace that and say, yeah, this is me, and I am going to own that. It just empowers me to own my story, to be able to show up for others in other areas, to support them in their journeys as well.
It's fantastic. And that's something that we've been talking a lot about with SheisMe. Like, how do we start empowering young girls, at younger and younger ages? Like, how, and not that the boys don't need help at all, but just, the platform is what the platform is, right? So, but maybe including, boys and girls younger, and starting up some kind of program. I don't know what that looks like, but how do we not have to sort of start with the unlearning part and just start with the learning part, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I always think of it as, I don't know if you can relate, but I remember when I was younger, I adopted a dog from, a shelter, and he was about 1.5. And I remember when I share this story, I always say, I feel like it was so much harder. And not to say that training puppies isn't hard, because it is. But at the same time, in addition to training this dog into new behaviors, I was having to have him unlearn behaviors that he had learned for 1.5 years, right? And so you're kind of almost double dipping almost, and saying, I'm trying to train you for good behaviors, but I'm also trying to combat the unlearn the bad behaviors, right? And so that conditioned self of things of how you were raised, what type of, self-worth and value did, your parents or your family or caregivers place upon you. And for me, mine was about wanting to be seen and heard. And I wasn't necessarily given that space when I was younger. And so it came out through perfectionism and overachievement, right? And a lot of people, I think, would be like, oh yeah, Shannon's great, Shannon's fine. But then it was really my call for help. Right. It was see me, hear me, value me. Right. And so and so now I'm trying to unlearn those behaviors of perfectionism is what I strive for, when it's really authenticity is what I strive for.
Right. I often call myself a reformed perfectionist, because that was my whole life. Overachievement, perfection, striving for that, and living by I was never good enough, because it was never perfect.
And isn't it exhausting?
It's so exhausting. Yeah. And then you wonder why so many women are completely exhausted and, having breakdowns and whatever else, just can't do it anymore. So overwhelmed with that carrot that's just constantly dangling in front of you that you could never, ever get to. And then when you think you did, along comes someone to knock you off that pedestal, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it was so difficult. So now, and I had a really good boss one time that said to me, it's better quantity in the case of where I was, quantity was better than quality. We needed to get stuff done versus it being perfect, because things just need to get done. We have deadlines and this and that. So get it done. There are other people that do other jobs that will edit and do and whatever, but just get the work done. And so now I just it took me a long time to get there, but now I feel like, yeah, let's get it done. I'm human. If there's a mistake, oh, well, I made a mistake. I can go back and correct it. That's what we do. And I literally do not have meltdowns about that anymore. I just sort of laugh and go, oh, oops, sorry. Yeah. And I'm really grateful for some of my friends who will even if I post on social media, they'll ping me and say, hey, there's a typo, or there's a, whereas I'm just trying to get it out.
Yeah.
And so now I think that I did that with my kids as well. It's it's okay. You don't have to be the best at everything. You don't have, nobody can be the best at everything. So just do your best.
That's it.
That was my message. Do your best. And as long as you do your best and you can lay your head on your pillow at night and say, wow, I really feel good that I did my best.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So I think I was going to ask you about the key takeaway for your audience, but I think you kind of covered that already. Unless you have something else to say.
No, I think I did cover it. The main key takeaway from my session will be mostly trying to help individuals step into their own story. Usually when I do any sort of presentation or workshop, it's what can you take away? One thing, right? And sometimes that's a new learning. Sometimes that's just validation, right? That you're doing the right thing and you're doing your best, because sometimes validating is so empowering, right? And so,
well, and that's the thing that we used to strive for, is that validation.
Absolutely.
Being seen and heard is validating, right?
Yeah. And so if it's like you hear my story and you're like, yes, I am doing the right thing, I'm advocating for myself, I'm owning my story, like, and that's what you walk away with, great. If it's sometimes we learn what not to do, right? And so if it's like, yeah, Shannon, thanks for being here, can't really relate to what you're saying, but thanks anyways, like that can be learning, right? It's all about perspective, right? So I think that's the key takeaway, is what is your one key takeaway that you can take away from my session, whether that is new learnings, validation, learn what not to do, with me sharing my story, what can you take away from it? So again, I don't want to be prescriptive and say, this is what I want you to take away. It is, I am creating space for you to come away with your own takeaway.
Yeah. I think the best thing about this, and this being our 5th conference, the best thing about this, and I've sat through every single presentation in 5 years, and every single presentation, I have an aha moment, because I make notes, because I'm sitting here monitoring and making sure everything goes smoothly for you. I'm making notes because I always come on afterwards and talk to you about that. Like, that was my aha moment in your talk. So I can guarantee without a doubt, 100%, that you will have an aha moment, no matter whose presentation you're listening to, but you will definitely get one out of Shannon's for sure. What's something you want people to know about you that you haven't already told us?
Yeah, so you will see through my story, and also probably how I'm just presenting right now, right? Like, I come from trauma. And I don't know if any of you can relate. And I think there is no shame in that, right? There's no shame in the experiences or the hardships that you have had to come into. But I think what I would encourage people when they come into my session is to be able to step into this space of letting go of that comparative suffering, right? Because we compare ourselves to, my trauma is more than your trauma, or my experience was more hurtful than your experience. We close that door to be able to relate and really empathize with others. And I don't know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Lisa, but the SheisMe is like, how do we create this space where we all can relate? And instead of fighting each other, and instead of comparing, and instead of saying like there's only one space at this table for us, how do we fight for multiple spaces at the table? How do we be advocates for each other? How do we uplift each other? And so I would always invite people, when they step into the space that I try to create for them, is to let go of this comparative suffering. Let go of that my hurt is more than your hurt, and just say, I've been hurt. I know what that's like. I've been through trauma and I know what that's like. And let's create a space where we can empathize and be there for each other and uplift each other's voices. But unfortunately, when we come into that space with this, I've been hurt more, or I've had more traumatic experiences, we're not able to do that. So I would invite people to think about how can they step into that space to be able to walk away with, I hope, more than if we come up with armor.
Right. No, that is exactly why SheisMe was created, because healing from my trauma, which happens every day, still healing from the, like you said, trauma, I was looking for a place to tell my story, but there wasn't a safe space. There was no safe space for me to go in and talk about it without being attacked. Not only by men who, or, you know, because you put things out there on the internet and you're constantly getting barraged with messages, but women as well. In fact, this morning I just looked at a video of a woman who was thrifting a vase from Goodwill, right? It was a swan. And she went home and she colored in the little eyeballs to make them black. And then she repainted the beak a different color. And there were at least 100 women who were on there shaming her and judging her for painting the beak on a piece of ceramics that she bought from Goodwill. That was an ugly color. I can't believe you did that. Da, 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 da. And I mean, I literally, my head exploded. And that's the kind of thing that I just didn't want to be anywhere near, right? And I only want to surround myself with women who don't want that either.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what I imagine SheisMe is, you know, when you see those pictures of like farm to table dinners or a wedding, and there are these really long tables and everyone's sitting at the table, you know, and it's really beautiful and the table goes on and on and on. And if you've ever been at a big family party and more people come and then somebody goes and runs and gets another table and unfolds some more chairs, right? And the table just keeps stretching and stretching and stretching. And there's none of this, you got to lean in, because I'm telling you, I hate that damn saying so much. Just lean in. That's so ridiculous. Don't lean in. Just don't even knock at the door. Just come in, grab a chair. If we don't have enough, we'll go and get you one. Like, come in, join us, sit at the table. You don't have to lean in. You don't have to ask for permission. Just be here. And no one is going to shame you and no one is going to judge you. And that is my vision. And that's what I've created. And that's what I want for SheisMe. And that's why this is a safe space. And that's why we all gather to share our stories and to help each other rise up and help those who come after us not have to experience or live through what we have. Right? It's breaking those cycles.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're here for. That's what all of us are here for. And that's why we're so attracted to each other and we're all coming together, is because we're the cycle breakers and we're the leaders. And we were put here to experience what we experienced so that we could teach others and lead others. And I am so thrilled beyond measure that we have Shannon and soon to be Alma with us and the other 50 plus speakers that are joining us this year, as well as the 350 speakers that came before you, because every single one of those women, over 500 now, believe in this vision, believe in this, sitting at this table together and building this community globally so that no woman ever feels alone. And we don't have to put up with any of those shenanigans that happen outside of, you know what I mean? There's always a safe space here at SheisMe. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox for a second. And I'm so passionate about this, you can tell. What did you want to join us?
Yeah, so I think, again, just to speak to the incredible work that you have done to try to create a platform and an environment for women to be able to show up as their authentic selves, to share their stories, to create space for us to learn from each other. Why wouldn't I want to be a part of that? Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a really great rhetorical question, right? Because, and again, I think as I have been on my own journey, and I've never tried, when I share my story, it's never to be this is, I don't speak for a generalized population or group. So all adoptees don't experience what I experience. All Asians don't experience what I experience. All women don't experience everything that I experience. But again, you had mentioned it. When we are able to find connection through other people because we can relate or because we don't feel like we're alone, right? That is why I want to be a part of this, because I have found when people share with me and I'm like, oh, it's so nice to not feel like I'm crazy, to not feel like I'm the only one out there, to feel like I'm so alone and I am on this island where I have to like suffer by myself. When somebody
Right.
has shared something vulnerable with me and I can relate to that, there is a sense of comfort in that. And so I think like,
Yeah.
I know that everyone can potentially experience trauma, can experience mental health issues, some are adoptees, some have adopted, some are in foster care, like all of these different things that kind of bring to my story. Maybe there's something that someone can relate to. And
Mm-hmm.
somewhere out there, all you need to know is that you're not alone, right? And
Right.
so that is why I want to be a part of this, is to create space for others to not feel like they're alone, because when space has been created for me, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And there are times when I haven't wanted to be. And
Mm-hmm.
so can we uplift and empower others by sharing our story so that others don't feel like they're so alone?
Right. That's exactly it, Shannon. Thank you so much for joining me live today. Thank you so much. We will see you at the conference, October 22nd through the 27th. Don't forget
Perfect.
to register. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks. Bye, everyone. We'll see you soon.